Well, look at California right now. Look at Los Angeles. What else do you think that is, besides violent colonization turning inward? You think this is about immigration law? You think ICE is enforcing laws? No. They are marauders, and you are the loot. ICE is not a law enforcement agency. It is a mercenary force under contract to private corporations, hunting human beings for profit. That's all it is. That's exactly what it is. They work for the private prison industry. Your so-called immigration department is just a subsidiary. It's an interface for the private prison industry. That's what it is. That's what you turned it into. These aren't arrests that they're making. These are profit-making activities that they're engaged in. Every detention is a paycheck. Every deportation is a dividend. Do you understand? Corporate contractors like Geo Group, like Core Civic, they're making billions of dollars from these cages, from this trauma, from this misery, from this terror. This is modern slavery packaged as homeland security. Down home.
Thanks, family. I hope you're doing fantastic. And it's always a pleasure to have you here in my channel. So regarding the current situation happening in Los Angeles, regarding the ICE raids, it is now coming out that the ICE raids is an agent of fear. It is not a law enforcement entity, but a private corporation, mercenary, hunting human beings for profits. So our speaker today talked about it and exposes the evil deeds that are happening now in America. So I'm not going to talk much. Let's listen to him first. Then we come back with a complete analysis about this story. Let's dive into it.
Well, look at California right now. Look at Los Angeles. What else do you think that is, besides violent colonization turning inward? You think this is about immigration law? You think ICE is enforcing laws? No. They are marauders, and you are the loot. ICE is not a law enforcement agency. It is a mercenary force under contract to private corporations, hunting human beings for profit. That's all it is. That's exactly what it is. They work for the private prison industry. Your so-called immigration department is just a subsidiary. It's an interface for the private prison industry. That's what it is. That's what you turned it into. These aren't arrests that they're making. These are profit-making activities that they're engaged in. Every detention is a paycheck. Every deportation is a dividend. Do you understand? Corporate contractors like Geo Group, like Core Civic, they're making billions of dollars from these cages, from this trauma, from this misery, from this terror. This is modern slavery packaged as homeland security. Down home. ICE is just a corporate interface. It's not a government agency. It's not a government agency. It's a corporate interface. Its core operations, transport, detention, surveillance, those are all being handled by private contractors, by the Geo Group, by Core Civic, BI Incorporated, private charter airlines. None of these companies are deputized, but they're the de facto operators of everything that ICE is supposed to do. ICE is just a shell. All the corporations, that's the substance. ICE is just a logistics operator. Policy is being written by investors. Stocks spike for all of those private prison companies immediately following any anti-immigrant executive orders, any deportation orders. Investor briefings from Geo Group and from Core Civic and so on, they literally celebrate any policy shift that increases detentions and deportations. Look, this isn't correlation, this is causation. The logic of finance capital now dictates state coercion. If Wall Street sees profit in suffering, then policy is adjusted accordingly. You make business a no-go zone for democracy, a no-go zone for accountability and for any sort of restrictions or limitations and so on. And it grew and grew and grew in unchecked power until it captured your state. It's only about profit and it's only about growth. And like I said, they have captured your government, and that's how your whole country is run now. That's how your whole society is run now. And you should recognize that they never ever believed in so-called democracy. Like I said, you're witnessing the logistics arm of what can only really be called an ethnic cleansing operation outsourced to the highest bidder. Yes, I said ethnic cleansing because do you really believe that this isn't racial? Do you really think that this has anything whatsoever to do with someone's immigration paperwork? We know who they're targeting and we know why. And if you have any sense, you'll also understand that this practice is going to do nothing but expand, just like any business expands. That's what businesses do. It means they're going after immigrants now. This is a pilot project. They normalize it by targeting immigrants, but this is a profit-making endeavor. And you'd have to be crazy to think that they're not going to multiply their revenue streams by targeting other demographics. Non-citizens and citizens, so-called minorities, members of the global majority, the poor, the homeless, the protesters. This doesn't go anywhere but expansion. They've turned immigration enforcement into a business model. They've turned it into a supply chain. You've got militarized raids rounding up immigrants like livestock, funneling them into for-profit prisons, slapping electronic shackles on their ankles, and shipping them out on corporate charter flights like Amazon parcels. I mean, they literally said that. They literally said that they want to run deportations like Amazon Prime. That wasn't satire. That was the ICE director's actual analogy. And you know what? He wasn't inaccurate. He was being accurate. Does Amazon care what's in the box? No, neither does ICE. They don't care what's in the box. You're not a person, you're inventory. Now you may think, well, I'm not undocumented, so this isn't my problem. Wrong. Because this isn't just about who's being deported. It's about why this is being done the way it's being done in the first place. It's about who's in line next time when the migrants are not enough to satisfy the profit potential of their model. You understand me? The infrastructure right now is being built today. The data surveillance, the AI-powered raids, the indefinite detention laws, the elimination of due process, the criminalization of entire populations. This isn't going to stop with immigrants. You'd be crazy to think it is. Like I said, this is just a pilot project. It's going to be used on you. It's going to be used on your protesters. It's going to be used on your political dissidents. It's going to be used on whoever refuses to comply. It's a system of repression, not immigration. They're using wartime laws from 1798 to deport people without hearings. Wartime laws, what war? I don't see any war except for the one that the government itself is waging on their own population. And they're waging that on behalf of nothing but the private sector, on behalf of the empire of capital. Yes. Understand what I'm saying. Your country has been conquered. I don't know what you think I mean when I say that your country has been captured, when your state has been captured. It's been conquered. It's been conquered by corporate power. Well, what does that make ICE? It's a colonial mercenary force, nothing, no more, no less. They don't protect communities. They invade communities and steal people. Where have we seen that before? I said they're marauders. This isn't law enforcement. I mean, let me say this with absolute clarity. The United States is in breach of international law. The UN has said it. Human rights experts have said it. Legal scholars have said it. Deporting asylum seekers without hearings? Illegal. Sending people to third countries that don't recognize them? Illegal. Holding civil detainees in solitary confinement for weeks at a time? Illegal. Medically abusing female detainees with unnecessary surgeries? That's illegal, that's criminal, that's barbaric. ICE detention facilities are the new Guantanamos for the domestic empire. These are the Amazon warehouses of captured human beings. The expansion of for-profit detention centers and privatized deportation logistics. This shows you the hollowing out of the state. And that's a key marker of late-stage neoliberal decline. The state is no longer the enforcer of the law. Understand? It's the broker of violence outsourced to private capital. That parallels the historic decline of other empires that began to mercenize their security apparatuses just like Rome did before the collapse. The state becomes just a brand, not a body politic. Deploying military forces domestically against low-risk civilian populations, let's be honest. Migrants, families, children, and so forth. That signals the securitization of social management. That's nothing but a hallmark of unstable regimes. It shows that the ruling class, as we all know, sees its own population, or anyway segments of its own population, as the primary threat. When the United Nations human rights experts call the immigration policies in your country illegal, when you deport people to third countries without hearings, when your detention facilities are described in UN reports as sites of torture, sites of inhumane treatment, you've lost all normative power globally. Nobody respects you. Your whole brand is tarnished. The United States can never again call itself the beacon of liberty, except that everyone in the world will roll their eyes or they'll laugh at the sarcasm. It's increasingly seen as a rogue actor. It selectively adheres to international law only when it suits their own power, their own agenda. Well, that undermines even U.S. soft power, and it isolates America diplomatically, which you don't even think is that important, but that is a significant erosion of civilizational leadership. They're doing nothing but set up the architecture of authoritarian control. That's what they're doing. This is pre-fascist legal architecture that they're setting up. Once that system is normalized, and they've normalized extrajudicial detention, indefinite holding without trial, arbitrary deportations, well, they've got all the tools they need. And they can apply those then to journalists, to protesters, to union leaders, to political dissidents, etc., etc., etc. And they will be used that way. That's how authoritarian regimes consolidate power and control, not by overnight coups, but by the slow normalization of what begins as exceptional measures. Because what did I just tell you? The private sector is authoritarian. And you all know it by your own work experience. The private sector is authoritarian. The private sector has now conquered and captured your government. Congress is nothing but the customer service desk for the Fortune 500. The presidency is just a brand ambassadorship. The Supreme Court is nothing but a dispute resolution hotline. So there's no way for your society to go now, except towards stricter and stricter authoritarianism. No, America is not stable. All of its coercive organs are being decoupled from law and being fused to profit. They're going to eat you to the bone. We're watching a case study in advanced private sector state capture. It's the state being repurposed to serve financial interests. Specifically, in this case, those who profit from incarceration, from deportation, from surveillance, from human disposability. I mean, the legal framework of immigration has now been converted into literally a revenue stream. Every enforcement action connected to immigration, even not just to immigration, arrest, detention, removal, this isn't just a state act anymore. It's a billable event. You understand? That means the corporations now have a vested interest in shaping immigration policy, just to expand the market for more detention and more deportation. But you have to understand, what is being captured is not just policy. It's the moral function of law itself in your country. I mean, the cynicism is breathtaking. Law now just becomes a delivery mechanism for corporate profits. I mean, when the system is like this, think about it. The more harm, the more profit. Overcrowding, delayed or denied medical care, lack of translators, for example, lengthy detentions, all of this increases their margins. Denial of basic rights just lowers their overhead. Geo Group gets paid by the head per day. So releasing detainees just hurts their revenue. Respecting rights, that's financially inefficient. Meaning, violating human dignity is now incentivized by the business model itself. Let that sink in. The state has not failed to regulate this. This is how they regulated it. Do you understand me? See, deregulation is still regulation, but it is the state regulating its own authority out of the affairs of business. It's the state regulating its own abdication of authority in favor of business. The Trump administration shut down DHS oversight offices that investigated abuses that took place in ICE custody. Why? Because oversight impedes profit. And in America, the state has no right to do that. The state has no right to interfere in profit making. That's the final stage of private sector capture. When the captured institution itself begins to dismantle its own power in complete capitulation and submission to capital. You're conquered. You're captured. You're defeated. You are subordinate as a country. Understand this. This isn't just corruption. Capture is more than corruption. It's much more than corruption. The state no longer holds the monopoly on so-called legitimate violence. It's just the broker of outsourced violence. The elected government is no longer accountable to the people. If it ever was, it's only accountable to shareholders. There's no longer a democracy by any definition in the United States. It's a cartelized corporate security regime, just draped in constitutional vocabulary. I'm telling you, ICE is a model for post-state governance. This isn't just a case of privatization, no. This is the template for how captured states are going to govern in the 21st century. Identify a social threat, immigrants, protesters, dissidents, what have you. Monetize their containment, outsource the enforcement, eliminate transparency, and then justify everything with security. And funnel all the proceeds to shareholders. What you're seeing is the transition from public governance to corporate dominion, as clear as day. Like I said, ICE is just the prototype, but education, health, policing, even war, has already begun the same transformation inside the United States. And that more than anything else tells you that America is not in control of America. It's being operated by those who build the state to brutalize the population in America. That's who controls America. And that's capture. That's capture consummated. And what are you doing about it? If you're not resisting, you're colluding. If you're not protecting those who are being targeted, then you're just rehearsing to play the same role of everyone who's going to ignore you when you get targeted next. You know, if you're not trying to shut down the machinery of this abuse and oppression, then you're just standing in line waiting for when it's your turn to be abused and oppressed. I mean, let me speak plainly. If we're talking about what's going on in California, for example, well, obviously the moral high ground belongs to the resistors. Obviously the moral high ground belongs to those who are hiding, undocumented families. Obviously. All the neighbors who are forming human chains around ICE vans, you know, students who are exposing the abuse of ICE, lawyers who are fighting in court, obviously they have the moral high ground. Any citizens who are trying to pull funding from those deportation airlines, you want to ask, is this legal? You should be asking, is it just? Because legality is always the last refuge of tyranny. They will always find some kind of law, anyway they write the laws, to justify their crimes. And then they'll just say they're following orders. We all know that. That's what every regime in history did that needed to have a Nuremberg trial. No, ICE is the modern day Gestapo of a privatized police state. It doesn't exist to protect the people, it exists to protect the corporate order from the people. It's an agency of fear. It's an agency of separation, of erasure. And I'm telling you again, they are marauders, and you are their loot. And unless you resist, and I'm not telling you what form your resistance should take, that's up to you, but it should exist. Because the structure that you tolerate today is the structure that you're going to be buried under in the future.
A lot of bad things are happening in America right now. And it seems that this system, it is not justice that drives it, but profit. It is now coming out that ICE is not a government agency enforcing immigration law, but a tool of fear, privatized under the guise of national security to terrorize the communities. So behind the raids, behind the detention centers and the shattered families, are contracts, private prisons, and corporations benefiting from human suffering. Wow. People are being hunted like fugitives. People who have not committed any crimes, but people who came into this country to look for a better future for their children. This is totally absurd. We must reclaim the soul of justice, against this oppressive regime. We must all remember that systems built on injustice, no matter how powerful they are, they eventually fall. We must speak up. We cannot be silent on this oppressive regime, because silence is surrender, and we were not born to bow. So we must stand up. We must speak up and fight for our rights to live without fear.